Thank you, Ian. Is this okay?
Let's turn that mic just a little bit. There.
Okay. All right, here we go. I was born in 1951, the child of first-generation Americans, Bartolo Giuseppe Bongiorno, and Angelina Loiacona. As you can tell from the names, I am, as the saying used to go, of Italian extraction. Sicilian Aeolian, to be exact, deep south. My mom and dad grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which is an Italian enclave that was near the docks on Atlantic Avenue in New York City. And both of their fathers were longshoremen. They were people who unloaded the boats that came in. My father was a plumber who bought a house in the country, Nassau County on Long Island, which is now a very near suburb of New York, but at the time it was the wilderness. And as soon as he could muster the down payment, he was a GI, the GA bill came through, he was able to afford a house. That's where I spent my childhood and grew up. Cromwell Road, Carl Place, New York, go Frogs, with its Cape Cods and backyard swing sets, was as different from Red Hook, where kids sat on stoops and played stickball in the street and Ring Olivio in the Airway. And I couldn't even imagine, it was so different. It was literally another world. On Cromwell Road, I was surrounded by a potpourri of families whose GI dads, like mine, took advantage of government programs to escape the city. I grew up surrounded by the Lettys, the Brenners, the Tanyuses, the Fahrenkoffs, the Bowdens, the Niesings, the Levines, and the Josvics, along with the Marjories and the Leonis. On my grandfather's block, there were Bongiornos, Mozzarellas, Malayas, Barcas, Loiaconas, Cusimanos, Gorinis, Notos. You didn't need a lick of English to get by. You did not. That's the only language I spoke. So as a result, I never had one actual conversation with my grandparents, because for them, grandkids were like exotic pets. You didn't have to talk to them. You fed them. You were happy to have many of them. It was good, but you let them run. So as far as I could see, my father had moved us into the America that I had learned about. It was a melting pot where people could live together. All kinds of people could live together. It was nothing like Brooklyn. So, and I idolized my father. He was smart enough to have earned a full scholarship to Cornell, just by virtue of his grades that high school gave out scholarships to the first two in their class. And my grandfather wouldn't let him go because education breaks up the family, so he didn't go. And he was good at everything. He was the go-to person for anybody needed anything mechanical, that needed repair, and he loved kids so much. To this day, my cousins will still reminisce about the things he did for them. He died like in 1993. Just last month, my cousin Johanna, who was pushing 80, told me a story I'd never heard about how my father taught her to swim. I was the only child for the first 7 years of my life, so I pretty much had him to myself. I respected his opinion. I thought him to be the wisest of men. Did I mention I was born in 1951? Do that math. That puts my teen years right in the middle of what people now look back on as the 60s, a time of social upheaval and questioning authority. I didn't think much of it. Mostly our high school was sleepy and unconcerned. The biggest protest action was by two girls who took an F in gym class rather than be part of sports night, a very peculiar Long Island event in which all girls were expected to attend and to participate. And they just didn't like being forced into it. As for me, I was just living my life until one day during my sophomore year, I came home to tell my mother that a boy I had a mad crush on had asked me out. The boy in question was 2 years older than I, a senior. His dad was the chairman of the English department in the high school. And the guy played trombone and bass fiddle, and was also president of the UN Club. Dream guy, no? No, not according to my folks. You can't go out with him, my father told me. He's Jewish. What? You listen to your father, my mother told me. That's all there is to it. What? If up till then my life had been spinning along dreamily like a 45 RPM record, this was the sound of the needle scratching deeply against the grain of the grooves. I was in shock. How on earth could this possibly matter? It made no sense to me. This is America. We were the good people who fought prejudice, and the Nazis. My boyfriend's mother, when I apprised her of the situation, asked me if my parents were anti-Semitic. I wasn't sure, so I asked. Mrs. R wants to know, are you anti-Semitic? Yeah, that was not the reaction I got. My father hit the roof. The two religions are diametrically opposed. I am not anti-Semitic. But you don't want me dating a Jew. Isn't that what it means? The situation worsened as I stubbornly refused to break it off. Two incidents stand out. I was out with some family members in the city, which is Brooklyn, the city, New York City. A group of boys wearing yarmulkes, probably from a local yeshiva, walked by. "Keep a hold of Pamela," someone said, to general mocking laughter. And then one even more dire, a huge screaming fight on Christmas Eve before we were to head out to the family gathering in Brooklyn, in which my father threatened to disown me. My instant reaction was, go ahead. I don't want your money anyhow. He didn't have that much. I didn't even understand why that was a threat. Yeah, seriously. But, it wasn't about the money. In my father's world, in my father's culture, if your family disowns you, you are as good as dead. In my world, it meant I would just have to go somewhere else for the holidays. But where? I actually walked out of the house that Christmas Eve morning, but I didn't go to my boyfriend's house. I walked around the block a few times and then went back home, where we reached a détente of sorts at the behest of my mom, who was in tears, along with my little sister, who at 9 years old was silent and confused. My decision to turn back home rather than go to my boyfriend that Christmas Eve was telling. It meant that he wasn't a safe harbor. But what was he? Was I sticking with him out of stubbornness, to make a stand for tolerance, because I didn't want to be anti-Semitic myself? We continued together for his first year at college, which was in New York, just a Long Island Railroad ride away. And sometime in the late spring of 1968, another boy, this one not a Jew, but not particularly Italian either, he was a WASP, which for those of you who don't know, means white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And the last name Monk is, yeah, that's the guy right there. It's a class of WASP surname, Monk. All right. And anyway, this guy had captured my attention. And I his. And he had asked me out, and I'd said yes. So now what? The night before the date with this new boy, I asked to meet up with my boyfriend in person. He was home from college that week. And I told him I wanted to break up. And he asked me why. I looked him in the eye and said, when I think about everything over the past couple of years, it just makes me feel kind of creepy. And that was the last I ever spoke with him. But I've had many years to wonder what I meant by saying something so cruel and completely unpremeditated. Perhaps it's because our relationship had played second fiddle to the family drama, and it was never tended properly. We didn't spend much time getting to actually know each other as our low-rent Romeo and Juliet ran its course. And he was 2 years older than I was. He once called me a diamond in the rough. And I didn't think I needed polishing, and I resented that. But we never discussed it. And while he was careful not to force me directly, he pushed me further physically than I was ready. And as of that night, though, we were done. I wasn't done with my family, however. I lived home one more year. The rupture scabbed over, and no one talked about it much. It was like it never happened, but it did. I went away to college, became a teacher, got married, had children of my own, and I have carried this lesson with me. My father, a decent man, had prejudices I reject. His attempt to strong-arm me into compliance was misguided. But he did help me understand something about the real world. People, myself included, are messy, complicated, and confusing. Accepting that doesn't mean giving up. It only means working through. Thank you.